So I've had the great opportunity to partner with Goalsetter, most recently in my hometown of Rock Hill, South Carolina, and sponsoring 100 kids to get savings accounts. And so basically this, I believe, is really a way to address, in my opinion, the racial wealth gap. And, I don't want to get too deep too early, but the reason why I think Goalsetter is important, and the reason why I think it's important to educate kids financially, is because this gap exists. And one way that we can address that is by teaching the next generation about managing their money, being good stewards of the money that they receive when it comes to spending, saving, investing, so that we can see that gap shrink, because so many of the inequities, the disparities that we see are related directly to wealth, especially in Black and brown communities.
Oh, I thought it was because of the Mexicans coming across the border. That's what. All right. So, all right, Ben. So Ben, you come out of.
I love you.
Do you? Do you? Benjamin's here. So you come out of a league where 75% of the people who, after they leave the league, end up broke. 75% is a high number because there are no guaranteed contracts. The length of time that you actually get to play, unless you are Tom Brady, who apparently is immortal, the freak. Anyway, you played with him and won a Super Bowl. Full disclosure, I can't stand the New England Patriots, but that's neither here nor there. But for you, who taught you? Because a lot of NFL players have so much financial insecurity, and you're famous, which to me is the worst combination in the world, is to have fame, notoriety, and no money.
Well, it's fame, notoriety, but it's also the fact that you're incredibly young. I mean, when you look at the league, these are young men that are coming out of college. When you look at the basketball, they're even younger. But in football, I mean, the majority of your roster is between the ages of 20, 21, 22, and maybe 27 years old. And so anybody, I don't care where you came from, if you have that amount of wealth so quickly, it's sometimes it's difficult when you make those types of decisions. I didn't come from a whole lot of money, but I had two parents who taught us about really saving and spending. It was about not spending more than what you had. It was about being able to pay for things and not put it on credit. It was those simple lessons that I learned, but also, full disclosure, I was a finance major at University of Georgia. And so if I were to mess this thing up, which we all have proclivities to do so, but if I were to mess this up, it will be even worse. And so I credit much of that foundation, though, to my parents. And it's just simple things, whether you have $1 million or whether you have $1,000, you can build wealth depending on how you invest, but also, most importantly, I would say, how you spend and how you save.
866-801-8255 is the number. Ben is here with Tanya. The craziest thing that you spent money on when you got your first contract?
Craziest thing.
Yeah. So you were drafted by the Patriots?
Yeah, I was drafted by the Patriots. Yeah, I was number 32. I did buy a car. That wasn't crazy because I needed one. I had a Volvo 240 that I hit a deer right before I got drafted. And so that was shot and I couldn't drive that anymore. The craziest thing, which is crazy now, was a home. I got married in 2005 and said, I can't bring my wife into my, we can't become one flesh if I don't have a house. So I went and I bought a house for over $1 million. It was at the height of the real estate market. I knew it might be a problem. Well, 6 years later, I leave New England. I was a free agent. I ended up going to Cleveland, lost a bunch of money on the house. And so you wouldn't think that a home is a crazy investment, and usually they aren't. But as I look back, that was really the big investment that I lost money on. But what I learned from that was I didn't need a home that was that expensive. Thank God I had the ability to keep playing and make amends for that and have a great wealth team around me now to help. But I look back and say, yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that if I could do it all over again.
Tanya, look, she's just sitting there smiling. What's the goal here with Goalsetters? And you've been on this show many times talking about, kids open up savings accounts. So many of our listeners have done that. They've done that for their relatives, their young nieces and nephews and godchildren. What's your ultimate goal? Like, do you have a benchmark for this year that you want to reach?
Absolutely, Karen. So listen, our ultimate goal, and people think I'm crazy when they hear me say this, but there are 11 million Black kids in America. There are 15 million Latino kids in America. These are the kids that are going to be the next generation that is suffering from the wealth gap more than any generation of Black or Latino people has in the history of America. By 2053, African Americans projected to have a negative net worth. By 2073, Latinos projected to have a negative net worth. What's my goal? My goal is to prove everyone wrong. My goal is that 2053 and 2073 don't have to happen because we get to every Black and brown kid in America. We get them signed up for a Goalsetter savings account, but it's not just that. We teach them all of these key concepts that Ben is talking about, the concepts that you talk about that so many of us didn't know until we were 30 or 40 years old. We're teaching these kids by the time they're 9 and 10 and 13 and 14. We want these kids to understand how to build wealth so they can build their own wealth and never believe that, oh, save, share, spend is going to make me rich. Save, share, spend never made anyone rich, but that's all we teach our kids. You have to invest. You have to understand compound interest. You have to understand the rule of 72. You have to understand diversification. It's a different language that our kids have never been exposed to. And so they can't succeed in this America unless they know the language. And we're teaching them that.
Hi, Tanya. I'm Seena, co-host on Thursdays here. I love this app. I think it's amazing. I guess my question is, I remember when I was taught finance in like 5th grade, or when I say finance, I want to put big quotes up there. They were like, hey, we're going to balance a checkbook. And even then I was like in 5th grade.
Wait, pause. You learned that in school?
That's what I was going to say. They tried to teach us in school. And I was like, what is a checkbook? How are we doing it? So my question for you guys, did that ever happen to you? What did you both learn at a young age? And is that even something that we can start integrating into the education system at all?
I think it's something that we definitely should integrate in the education system, no doubt. Because a lot of those things are what we would probably call life skills. There are things that it's assumed that some people know, but large swaths of our populace do not understand these things. Look, I didn't learn about a checkbook, even though I saw my mom going to a checkbook a lot of times when we were at the grocery store. I didn't know what the heck she was doing. I thought it was a magic card or something like that. But as I got older, I learned about those things. But I also realized in encountering so many of largely, even in college, my white counterparts, they knew things about money that I just didn't know. And so it has been a process. And I would agree with Tanya when she does talk about the fact that we need to learn about investing and understanding that the stock market is not some scary place. Certain startup companies are not scary, but it's about diversification. The Bible talks a lot about diversification in Proverbs. It talks about diversifying, and so that when one bucket has problems, the other buckets don't suffer. But so many times when we're looking for, and going back to your question, Karen, about athletes and people that have a lot of wealth very quickly, many times you don't realize that you have wealth and you're in such a go-getter mentality that you end up over being too embracing too much risk because you're trying to get the doubles and triples and quadruples instead of understanding about diversification and all those values that we're learning through Goalsetter.
Or you say, I don't want to deal with that. I just want to focus on, and you hand it over to somebody else. True. When you should know where every nickel and dime that you make is going and we heard about Scottie Pippen and Antoine Walker and so many other athletes who've had their wealth. Oh, Tim Duncan, the GOAT, had their money completely decimated by somebody that they handed it over to blindly. So that's important. 866-801-8255. But now we have technology. As you guys were talking, Seena's mentioning he learned how to balance a checkbook. Balancing checkbooks aren't really relevant for this generation coming up. So Goalsetter has become even more important because it's an app. It's tech, right? And I learned how to make pancakes in home economics. I learned how to make a napkin holder in my shop class in the 5th grade. We should learn, like those things are important. We should bring them in. We should teach kids cursive. Like our whole school system right now does not function for the world that we live in. So
cursive, really?
Cursive writing. Yeah. Because it does something with your brain.
You write it like this with a mark? Is that
you can't
will?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
We have 7 children, so we're going through.
Wait, we who?
What?
We who, Ben?
My wife and I.
7? Y'all have 7? So you stopped at 7 because that's the number of completion?
Yes, you got it. Actually, we started at 5 and we tried to go to 6, and God had jokes to say, here, you're going to have a double. So the last 2 are identical twin boys, but it is the number of completion. And I will say this, going back to the finance conversation, this summer, part of schooling and teaching your kids, it doesn't end at the end of the school year. Summer is a great opportunity. I would even say as a shameless plug, not shameless plug for Goalsetter, but the fact that there are financial literacy courses on there and tests and those sorts of things. Parents, this is an opportunity this summer to focus on these things. You have an opportunity in the summer to do things that maybe weren't happening throughout the school curriculum year. And so it's a great opportunity. And we're going to do that with our kids. Yes, our seven kids.
Ben's over here starting a hedge fund in his own house.
Yeah. I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at him. He can afford it. So there's that too. So Tanya, what do these lessons look like? Tanya VanCourt is here. We got the great Ben Watson in the building, Seena Ghaznavi. What do those lessons look like? To Ben's point, how do parents who are listening access those lessons, and what would you suggest they do in terms of making time for the kids to learn things, children?
So, Karen, just like Ben is a father of 7, I'm a mother of 4. And so one of the things that we know is, I know, just shake your head.
Just out here, just spreading the love in the world. We're not mad at it. Somebody got to do it.
But, parents don't have a lot of time. And a lot of times, because parents were never taught about financial education or financial literacy, they also don't know what to teach their kids. So the beautiful thing about Goalsetter is we make it easy. Number one, we make it easy no matter how old your kids are. So we can appeal to every kid in Ben's family and every kid in my family. We have financial literacy quizzes that are from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And so each of those quizzes is mapped to a financial literacy standard at the grade that your kid is. We're teaching them in an age appropriate way, but something about money that they can understand. So for kids who are in kindergarten, we would explain needs versus wants. You can understand that in kindergarten. But in 11th grade, you're doing APY versus APR and stocks versus bonds and compound interest. And key and the rule of 72, key concepts that are going to help you to build wealth. But they're all rooted in memes and GIFs from social media influencers and pop culture and hip hop artists. So, we have one quiz as an example that says, if Rihanna wants to invest $10,000, what's the best way for her to invest it? Number one, she should put it all into Kylie Jenner's beauty company because we know Riri loves beauty. Number two, she should divide that $10,000 and put it into 3 different beauty companies because Riri really loves beauty. Or number 3, she should put $3,000 into Microsoft, $3,000 into Nike, and $3,000 into a beauty company and put the last $1,000 somewhere else. And we explain that Rihanna should do the last thing because not only should you not put all of your eggs in one basket, you shouldn't put all of your eggs in one industry. And that's called diversification. But kids just learned that through a story, and they learned it through someone who, they can relate to and connect with. And they've never in the history of our country and America had an opportunity to learn from a person who's a mom, a person who's African-American, a person who has 6 years of Nickelodeon experience under her belt and 3 years of Discovery education. So we pour all of those things into the app and really meet kids where they are in a way that's way more fun and way more educational than just handing them a debit card and saying, oh, go spend money. That's financial education. That's not financial education. That's what we saw happening in the industry. And we said, great, our kids are just learning to be consumers again. We don't want that. We are going to give them these financial quizzes. And then one final thing about our quizzes, they're attached to our teen and tween debit card with a rule called learn before you burn. So Goalsetter quizzes will freeze on Sunday morning if your kid has not taken their financial literacy quiz for the week yet. And the minute they take that quiz, the card will unfreeze again.
Wow.
I like that. Freeze.
Wow. Yeah, freeze them out. Ben, how did you meet Tanya?
Well, we haven't even met in person. We haven't even met. We connected, the way you do things now is through Zoom calls and through social media. My last real event with her, as I mentioned before, was actually a couple of days ago for Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is the place where I went to high school. We had about 100 kids or so in a boxing gym that were sitting there listening to Tanya actually go through some of these lessons that she's telling you all right now. About an hour-long session of courses. And then we told the kids that they were going to be quote unquote drafted and we were going to provide these accounts for them and their parents to go through. But I'm still looking forward to giving her a hug around her neck because of what she's doing, I think is something that is so greatly needed. And just to hear her story, which at some point, I know she's been on several times, you probably told it before, but hearing her story and her journey of coming to financial literacy and growing her companies and those sorts of things is really encouraging for the kids and also encouraging and inspiring for myself.